Welcome everybody. My scratchy voice, aren't you glad I'm not reading today? We welcome you all. So glad that you're here. I just wanted to let you know that we have a special spooky program for next week. Carol Goldsmith is going to be reading. And today's in costume, of course, and games. So don't miss it. And we're very, very happy today to have Lynn Featherstone with another one of his hilarious
Maybe.
stories. So thank you. Remember, come next week and invite folks to join us. Okay, thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank and welcome everyone to this afternoon's reading presented by the Forest at Duke's resident readers. And she's already told you my name. So it is a pleasure to be reading today. And I'd like to give a warm thank you to Carolyn and for inviting me today. And that thank you extends to all of you people who came out today. There exists, first, if I really have a title, it's going to be Things That Go Bump in the Light, not the night. There exists in the English Book of Common Prayers, which dates back to the Middle Ages, an item that goes something like this. From ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties and things that go bump in the night. O Lord, protect us. But my tale isn't about the night, but rather the light. Allow me to dwell on the word things. In most Western languages, things has several connotations. The first connotation refers to tangible, touchable items that in most cases give feelings of familiarity and comfort to the beholder. A second connotation is that of an idea, a thought process. Though abstract, it is still a known entity, somewhat neutral emotionally. But the third, as noted in that earlier quote from the Book of Common Prayers, is of a more philosophic, spiritual nature, with an emotional connotation of not quite right, a little off from normal, maybe illegal or immoral, dangerous even. That is the sense of things in the quote. That is the sense of that word, things. In Western culture, spooky is usually associated with the darkness of night or stormy, cloudy days. Locations that evoke strong negative feelings include sites where there is corruption, no matter the type, or decrepitude of any manner, or a place of known death. These you categorize as spooky. Graveyards are automatically qualified as creepy and disquieting. Add to these creepy, dreary local climes, if you will, a couple of cast member natives to our planet, such as ghouls and vampires and werewolves. Now, throw in a ghost or two of varied descriptions, some soul suckers and life leechers such as the succubi and the mermaids, and you got a scary place. Oh, let us not forget all the minions of the lords of darkness, known respectively as Baal, Beelzebub, Satan, or Shiva, to name just a few. Or sometimes people may stumble into eerie, unnerving situations that seem to have no visible source. But can our science come to our rescue with a coherent explanation? After all, modern science has solid math, deductive reasoning, many new and wonderful tools to burrow into the unknown. Take the nucleus of an atom, its structure. In that structure, there are now things never seen or dreamed of. Science has tangible empirical evidence of the existence of these things, such as neutrinos, quarks, flavored particles, or colored particles. As to their purpose, only speculation exists. And yes, these things are imperceptible to the human senses. Has anyone had their hair stand on end, get a sick, sinking feeling in one of their stomach, palms begin to get sweaty? Or maybe it starts out with weak knees, feeling your mouth suddenly going dry. And why not throw in a side order of goosebumps, or all of this at once? We all know this state as far as is in its fear, which can quickly turn into terror. Our animal brains, the medulla, now turns on its old standby reflex, flight or fight. After all, it is our most commonly employed reflex. When one feels simple fear, some rationality remains. But if terror, you experience the desire to run wildly, looking for a weapon with which to defend yourself, or just getting the hell out of there. Now that, baby, is terror. And if all rationality leaves you, welcome to sheer terror. It is now the season for said symptoms, i.e., Halloween. So allow me to tell you a true story. And you may believe it or not, and it is true. My tale for you as we approach All Hallows Day comes from someone I'm well acquainted with, my best friend. Let's just call him Red for now. He had such an experience of bumping into the vast unknown. It was not of the nature of the cast of characters seen at a Halloween party, nor out trick-or-treating, but rather something unseen of a nature beyond his understanding, and very definitely violent. You know, old Red spun his yarn so well that even as yours truly, present this, my reaction as was when I first heard it, a little bit uneasy, scared, and wondering about what that was. I can bear witness to some parts of this little yarn. So allow me to introduce the hero in this tale. His name was, ta-da, Sniffles. Sniffles. What? He was a little brown, half Pekingese, half who knew what mutt. And I'll bet he was proud of his heritage. Always with the tail a wagging, tongue rolling out, lolling out, he'd happily jump up and down on Red's legs every day when Red returned home from school. That little brown dog loved nothing better than having someone scratch his head, behind his ears, or on his rump. He'd go into raptures if you rolled him over on his back and started scratching his tummy. And he was protective of Red and his three sisters. That was one happy mutt, though. He'd always been a friendly dog, showing affection to his owner and family, as well as anyone who seemed friendly toward these individuals. Sniffles didn't know any tricks, but he did obey some simple commands. But nature had gifted him. Never forget, please, that dogs can hear in the range human ears cannot, and see into spectrums we cannot. And by the way, their noses are legendary. And by the end of this event, he'll have earned the right to be called Sniffles, the brave and the loyal, and in capital letters. The other main character is Red. He was about 11 years old, just before going into the 7th grade. He was a reading addict, would be the preferred politically correct term describing him today instead of bookworm. With his screaming red hair, face and body covered in freckles, skinny, about 5'4", and at least 130 pounds, he had read, by the time he left Gastonia, North Carolina, all the science fictions and fantasy books in the schools and public libraries, and tons more, both fiction and nonfiction. Red was a fair athlete, a good student, and very, very curious. A couple of other characters appear along the way in this story as well. Jim Carrey, Red's best friend, was 1 year younger. Aunt Belle was a caregiver friend of the family, who was interested in reaction to this, who had interesting reactions to this tale when she was informed. It led Belle to telling Red tales about her experience with things that go bump. The Lewises and other were part of the what was called the Union Road gang of kids that played all over the neighborhood. Now, let us set our stage. This happening took place not on a dark, foul night, but rather late day you get sometimes in North Carolina in late August. It was of low humidity, hot temperature, about 80, 89 degrees, a slight breeze blowing. It was about 2 in the afternoon. It was much better than some of those usual 90-something days you see here in North Carolina. The location for this eerie event sat on a red dirt hillock just beside Union Road, which heads southwest out of Gastonia, North Carolina, toward Clover, South Carolina. Nor did that event occur in some putrid, icky place. It took place on a 70 by 50-yard patch of good old Carolina red dirt, about the size of half a football field, I would guess. It had been created by the city scraping to widen Union Road. Most of you probably have seen how top layers of sediments in lake bottoms or puddles that dry up crack open into a mosaic of dirt clods that tend to curl at the edges and pull up from the lower layers beneath. Nothing grew on this patch, not a thing. The end of this patch was next to Union Road, stood about 5 feet, my height, above the grade of the Union Road. It was settled on a vacant lot between the Lewises and the Martins' house, which faced Union Road. This lot butted up against his family's garden on the other end. The left side running out toward Union Road was wooded. So you have woods here, Union Road, this garden. And the other side, the right side of that, was open field. This red dirt patch down at the end toward Union Road was surrounded on 3 sides by broom straw. The 50 yards furthest from Union Road was nicely grassed and formed the home football and baseball diamond for the Union Road gang. Across Union Road from this patch of red dirt was a hosiery mill that, like all such plants in Gaston County and the whole South, only ran when they had orders. That day, the plant was quiet, parking lot empty. The day was a Wednesday or a Thursday. I can't remember I'm not clear in my memory on that. And Red was out of school for summer break. Everyone, especially kids in the neighborhood, used this lot to shortcut between Union Road and Betty Street, which were a place where Red lived. The incident all began when his buddy, Jim Carey, had called and asked him to come down and play a little two-man baseball. He and Red had then tried to check everyone else in the neighborhood, trying to just get up a game of one-eyed cat in Jim's front yard, but everyone seemed to be missing. Jim was at home babysitting his sisters, Faye and Ann. Therefore, Red had to go down to Carey's house rather than play on Red's side yard. You see, Jim's mom was at work on the first shift over at the Featherstone plant, where they made tire cords for automobile tires. His dad was the first shift fixer over at the Grade Novelty Yarns. They got daycare when they could and did the best they could, if not, and sometimes Jim had to take care of his sisters because they couldn't get anything. So Red grabbed his glove, baseball, and his Gastonia Rocket baseball hat. Charging out the back door, he yelled to his Aunt Belle, who was watching her soaps out there in the living room, "I'm going down to Jim's house. We'll throw the ball around some, but I'll be back for supper." Belle Davis, a.k.a. Aunt Belle, was a woman who'd lived with Red's family off and on, doing housework and caring for Red and his siblings. This allowed both the parents to work. Red's mom spooled on the second shift over at the Clarendon Armstrong, part of the Far Yarn Company. His dad, also a second shifter, was the overseer at the J.P. Stevens Armstrong plant across town. Red took off up through the garden, out the gate, and into the edge of the forest. It was on the left half of this vacant lot I'm talking about between the Lewises and Martins, where he paused with his little pet dog, Sniffles. Sniffles, the true star of this story, was Red's pal and traveled with him everywhere. He could be sometimes a pest on the baseball field or the football field when the neighborhood guys played their home games with other neighborhood teams. His parents had gotten Sniffles for Red and his sisters when Red was in second grade. Sniffles' name came from Red's favorite character in a comic book at the time named Mary Jane and Sniffles. Sniffles was the little mouse character in that cartoon who always wore a sailor's hat and a sailor's suit. Comic books they were then, but they're now called graphic novels. He stopped to catch his breath and roll Sniffles around a little bit, petting his tummy. After a few minutes, they started down the trail toward the Union Road, walking along in the cool of the woods. Sniffles, at his usual gait, tongue lolling out, not a care in the world, not a yard, about a yard to Red's front, a little to his left. Upon nearing the place, the trail went right to cut out into the sun and the broomstraw field, thence across to the red dirt of interest in our tale. Sniffles stopped short, staring out toward the red spot, growling deep in his throat, his body tense, tail up, but no longer wagging. It was about 5, maybe 10 yards before the path cut right to take you across to the grass in the Lewis's yard where it gently sloped down to the Union Road. Red stopped staring at Sniffles as he turned toward the side trail to look across the broomstraw to the cleared area in order to see what our fuzzy hero was so excited about. The dog darted in front of him, turned to face him, and began to bark from time to time, turning a bit to his left so he could look out at the red hill. Then he turned back and barked at Red again. Really, this startled Red. But he was in a hurry to get down to Jim, so he kept shuffling forward with Sniffles barking at him and turning occasionally to look out over the field. Once Sniffles reached the trail that cut out to the right, he sped off down that trail, barking toward the far side of the weed-choked field, toward the red desert that I'm talking about. Then out onto it. Red cautiously followed, fearing that his pal might have scared up a snake or possum, a turtle, a rabbit, or even a rabid animal. It might be in the broom sage where Red, could not spot it. Red did a couple of 360 turns to see if something might be close to him. All the while, Sniffles was growling and yipping at something out on the red bare dirt area. Red turned onto the trail, a very curious young gentleman, and got about halfway to the desert area. That's when Sniffles turned, charged back toward him, and started barking, growling, and butting into his legs. Now, Red was getting a little more spooked by this, fearing that his pal might be coming down with distemper or rabies or some other malady he knew nothing about. Red started inching back the way they'd come, with Sniffles barking and darting from the broom straw to him. And then he took off into the broom straw and reappeared down next to the red dirt. All of a sudden, he gave a high pitch and darted off onto that red dirt. He acted as if he had something in front of him as he would dart in, nip at something, back off, backwards, dart in again, moving side to side. He acted as if he had something in front of him. In his circle that he was creating with this activity, he was creating a circle like this. He acted as if he was fronting something. In his circle, he was creating a circle of torn up red dirt out there on that plain of red dirt. He was constantly scooting back and forth, barking at something, eyes up at a spot that would have been about a foot over Red's head. He'd then do the dart and bite motion once again, mesmerized and starting to feel a little queasy. Red watched all this in fascination. This went on for what Red thought might have been about 2 or 3 minutes, but he wasn't sure. He himself, now very anxious, was looking at the ground that Sniffles was attacking to see what was there. A snake, rat, squirrel, turtle, what? Nothing. Nothing was all that he saw. Absolutely nothing but red earth. No object, no plants, nada, zilch. Sniffles had kept this up, creating a complete circle of churned earth around some spot that was about 25 feet in diameter. Red had seen the beginnings of this as Sniffles had first charged off down the trail through the broom straw. But remember, I told you Red was curious and that overrode his growing unease. Red, feeling of fear, growing not knowing what had first excited his buddy, stayed frozen in place, watching Sniffles do his charge in and out and working around the spot. As Sniffles came back around the circle and to Red's left, he let out a wild, high yelp and scurried backwards to the path in the broom straw. That made Red's stomach drop. He also noticed that there was no breeze. The air felt dead and smelled musty. Could have been the smell of the sweat forming all over his body. Sniffles then turned and ran straight at Red, emitting a keening, whining noise loudly. He hit Red just about mid-shin bone. He then began loudly barking, then snapping at Red's blue jeans. He got hold of Red's left leg, jean, his jeans. He got hold of his left leg jean and shook it back and forth violently. Worked around to the side and frantically tried to pull Red back down the broom sedge trail toward home. Red now spun around about 180 degrees, pulled away from Sniffles, tearing the pants leg. He got out of Sniffles' jaws and staggered backward a couple of steps. This had him going backwards toward that red dirt circle out there on the clearing. Sniffles gave a loud series of barks and charged out on the dirt desert again, resuming his attack retreat, circling of the cleared center of that torn up red ring. He realized then that Sniffles may be trying to protect him and get him out of trouble. At that moment, Red also experienced the tendrils of terror, the feeling that there is power in front of you and you are utterly alone to deal with it. That it is you or it, or as some people like to say it, it's you or him. And you may not come out of this alive. What brought this about? As Red looked on in fascination, hoping his dog was just eating loco weed or something, Red watched the Sniffles change his tactics. And instead of darting in, nipping at the ground, then darting back, he jumped up like you see him jump on someone he was happy to see. Red didn't get that for a moment. Then it hit him. Sniffles should have gone straight out into the undisturbed red dirt inside the middle of this disturbed red dirt ring. But no. His little legs were scratching air, like an invisible door or window was there. A couple of moments went by, and all of a sudden, Sniffles went sprawling 90 degrees out from the circle, head over heels to Red's right. He had traveled about 5-6 feet. So he scrambled back to his feet, barking all the way, and charged back into the disturbed ground and worked his way till he was on the other side, to Red's left, and did his charge up to the invisible wall and raising up on his hind legs, starting to scratch at the unseen wall once again. Suddenly, he went flying, about 6 or 7 feet, but this time he was airborne. He hit the ground, emitting a howl with what to Red seemed like pain, and limped, scurried over toward Red. That's when the terror struck Red. And he turned and ran back down the broomstraw trail and then turned right instead of left when he and Sniffles hit the woods. They were both in flight, out over Union Road with a car coming. Reaching the other side, they flew across some grass at Lawler's Hosiery Mill, slammed into the chain link fence over there, and slid down it, both shaking and trying to catch their breath. The man in the car that almost hit them had stopped and was shouting at them, according to adding to the fear that they had just had and fearing trouble from the man with the car. Red jumped up, taking off down Union Road toward Jim's house with Sniffles limping at his side. The guy drove on, and they made it to Jim's and sprawled out on his porch, not bothering to announce themselves. Finally, pulling himself together, he let Jim know he was there. Jim, of course, saw their condition, sweaty, dusty, shaking. He had to ask what was going on. Red explained events, and Jim just laughed, figuring he was being spoofed. Red nearly drank the faucet dry and gave Sniffles all he wanted of water. After throwing the ball around a bit, Jim's dad arrived home to watch over Faye and Ann. So Red and Jim walked back up to the Lewis's yard, up to the broomstraw patch, and then out to the red dirt patch. As he had claimed, he had calmed down and felt safer with a human along with him on this trip. As they started out, Sniffles came out from under an azalea bush where he'd been lying and started limping around the side of Jim's house. He disappeared into the woods at the back of Jim's home, and Red never saw him until he reached home that day. When they got to the Lewis's, they climbed up the end of the broom sage trail and walked up to that torn-up dirt circle. They didn't go out to it. You could see the tracks where Sniffles had been pushed the first time he stood up against the wall, and the second landing point where Sniffles had been seen to fly after standing on the wall. What was interesting, there was no disturbed ground between the inner circle and that wall and where he had landed the second time when he went flying. At this point, fear was raising again in Red, so he backed out to the Lewis's yard, went down the Union Road, said goodbye to Jim, and crossed Union Road, putting the road between himself and that red dirt hill. He went up to Betty Street and turned left for home. He wasn't about to go back into the broom sedge and woods again that day. Red's fear must have flowed over to Jim because he too wouldn't walk out onto that red dirt. When he arrived home, there was Sniffles. The little guy was still a-quivering. He piled on the affection and some extra food, but Sniffles ate very little then or the next several days and limped around on a damaged right leg. His dad decided not to take him to the vets, but applied liniment every day to his right leg. Red went inside the house after caring for his shook-up animal and told Aunt Belle about the incident. She went up to the next day with him to see it. That led her to eventually start relating her stories of haints, as they're called. These things are called back up in the mountains of North Carolina. It was a long time before he used that trail again, but he did eventually. The next day, he showed the place to me, and I noticed that Sniffles wouldn't go with us. He literally stopped dead in his tracks at the top of the garden by the gate. I felt that feeling of unease and dread as Red showed to me that bare ground with the disturbed dirt circle and the landing point where Sniffles had hit. Over the years, Red kept up with that spot. He said about 20 years later that the place remained a red dirt patch and that he never saw a green growing out on it. I revisited it a couple times myself and noted the same thing. Also, the red patch never seemed to change in shape or in size. Both of us walked out on the dirt and scuffled around on it, but never came across anything unusual. I do believe there was something that day. What was it? I'll probably never know, but the memories are still vivid. In life, I've run into some other things, so I have to give this credits to this story. Another fallout from this incident was that our hero, Sniffles, was never seen up toward that spot again. During the neighborhood baseball, basketball, and football home games, Sniffles never attended anymore. He never came onto that property. Might it have been that the ball ground was too close to the red spot? Remember, it was on the opposite end of the vacant lot from the red dirt down on Union Road. There was a little band of broom straw that separated the two areas. If my sisters went up to the Lewis house, which was where this place was between the Lewises and the Martins, he would stop at the gate and never go up there. If they went down to play with Jim's sisters, he would sense where they were going and by some unknown manner meet them there. Summer showers obliterated that dirt circle that Sniffles had made, and the lot was eventually sold. The hillock where the red dirt patch existed was dug up and carted off, and some small offices and business were erected there. I've mentioned a cast of characters, morbid places, or even signs that may be consulted for an explanation of what occurred that summer afternoon, and have come up with no answers. So perhaps we should contact the Church of England and have them modify that old Book of Common Prayers to read, "From ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties and things that go bumping in the night, O Lord protects us." Have it say instead, "From ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties and things that go bump in the night or the light, O Lord protect us." That is my tale, and you can believe it or not. Any questions? It's kind of an eerie story. It actually happened. And I thought I'd just tell that story here right on All Hallows Eve. Thanks for coming, guys. Appreciate it. Okay. She's got control.
You got that thing in your Here she comes.
Hello. Hello. I'm still on.